Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, we've talked about Brexit and Parliament, Brexit and food, Brexit and Ireland, Brexit and seemingly everything. So how about Brexit and space satellites? Here's Greg to explain.
Could a row about a sat-nav system steer Britain's future defence and security relationship with the EU off course?
Galileo! Galileo! Galileo!
Galileo is meant to be Europe's answer to the US GPS system, which is currently used by millions of consumers and businesses every day around the world. The project was launched in 2003 and should be completed by 2020, with 30 satellites in orbit. The UK has already spent in excess of £1 billion on the scheme, but now the European Commission is threatening to block it from accessing the system after Brexit. Why? Well, Britain wants access to the encrypted part of Galileo to guide missiles and plan military operations. But reports claim that the EU is concerned about a former member still having access to sensitive security information of the remaining member states. And so a tit-for-tat row has ensued. The EU's threatened to take away key contracts for Galileo, previously awarded to companies based in the UK.
One of the conditions in that bid documentation from the European Space Agency is that all work has to be led by an EU-based company from March 19.
In response, Britain is looking at blocking it from using British overseas territories, such as the Falkland Islands and Ascension Island, as monitoring bases. The tarantula-owning Defence Secretary Gavin Williamson says if the EU kicks us off the project, we'll build our own.
Greg, thank you. Well, we're joined now by our old friend, well, not so old actually, Adam Fleming, who's in Brussels for us. So, Adam, is Brussels playing games here with European security and the Brits?
Well, that's certainly the accusation that came from the British government yesterday in the form of this, which is a 39-page document that was presented by British negotiators to EU negotiators in Brussels at the end of last week, where they basically said all the things that Greg mentioned in that piece there. And the conclusion that the British negotiators made to their EU counterparts was this is a test case for the whole Brexit process when it comes to security. And the question to the EU that they posed was, do you want to take the British pragmatic approach, which is the world's a scary place and friends need to stick together in a pragmatic way? Or are you going to stick to your doctrinaire EU approach, which is that being out can't be as good as being in? That is the challenge that's been thrown down to the EU by the UK and repeated in a statement by the Brexit Secretary David Davis last night. But I have to say, as a Brexit watcher, this Galileo story has got absolutely everything. Technology, a clash of worldviews, commercial interests, a ticking clock to count down, different views in the UK and different views in the EU. Historians will look back on this row and think, yep, that was the one that probably symbolised the whole Brexit process.
Well, we'll test that with our historian here in the studio. I'm glad it's got you so excited. And it is important, as you say. It was also quite insulting, wasn't it, to imply that Britain can't really be trusted with sensitive information? I mean, it's still part of the EU.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were asking Kwasi or
no,
me there.
You, Adam. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
I'll come
to you. Yes.
Yeah, we'll get to our historians in a minute. I'll do the current
yeah,
thinking.
exactly.
What Michel Barnier has said about this, he has gone on the record ever since this row started a few months ago, saying that the UK, as a non-member, cannot have access to the proprietary stuff that's either in the satellites or generated by the Galileo system. In other words, a non-member can't have access to the top secret stuff. However, the UK, as a third country, can have access to the stuff that other third countries can have access to. So, for example, Norway and the US are currently negotiating with the EU to get access to the secret signals. The EU says Britain can go through the same process. Britain says, if you look at everything to do with security, treating the UK in the way that other third countries are treated means that you will threaten security of the continent, because Britain is so big, such a big player when it comes to intelligence, security and technology, that treating the UK like Norway, basically, is actually a risk to the continent's security. That was the message in this document yesterday that was conveyed to Brexit negotiators last week.
I like the way you whispered about like Norway. Adam Fleming, thank you very much there in Brussels. So let's test that theory. Do you agree with Adam that this could be seen as the sort of test case for how Brexit is actually going to work?
I do agree. It's very alarming indeed that this should be the lightning conductor for so many other things that are flying around. And for the suggestion to be made by anybody that the Brits can't be trusted when we're at the centre of the Five Eyes intelligence relationship, the most successful intelligence relationship in the history of the world, which is the World War II allies, United States, Canada, us, New Zealand and Australia. Routinely we share information and it doesn't leak. So this is not just alarming, it's insulting. And it's all too important, this area. The need in a very nasty world to share real-time intelligence and to have as much pooling as you possibly can.
All right.
For it to become yet another example of the scouring and searing effect and the corrosive effect of Brexit.
Right. I mean, in terms of looking at Brexit, they have a doctrinaire, as Adam Fleming said, that they are sticking to quite rigidly. There's also an implication that there is a sort of commercial motivation behind this. And in fact, I'll just put that to Adam if he still can hear me. Is that the case, that actually it's not just about diplomacy, but also about some sort of commercial reason behind it to stop British companies bidding?
Well, I mean, there's a big theory that a lot of the roadblocks in the Brexit process and the strictness with which the EU is handling Brexit comes from the French government in particular. And surprise, surprise, there are lots of big French defence companies who might like to grab some business from the UK. So that's the working theory at the moment.
All right.
There's another little intra-EU twist that I'd like to introduce to you, though,
OK,
Jo.
briefly, yes.
So the European Commission wrote to the UK in April setting out the procedure for Galileo and their strict limits. However, the member states themselves were not consulted before that letter was sent. And so now a group of member states are demanding to see the letter. Michel Barnier's team are saying it's nothing to do with us. It's all to do with Brexit preparedness, which is handled by a different department, which is headed by Martin Selmayr, Jean-Claude Juncker's former right-hand man and a very controversial figure. So it's causing a bit of tension within the 27 as well.
Aha. Thank you very much, Adam.